Chicago firefighter hurt in crash on I-57 near Halsted while responding to car fire on expressway. A Chicago firefighter was hurt when his vehicle was struck Thursday night as he responded to a car fire on I-57, CFD officials said. Illinois State Police confer troopers responded to the scene where a Honda CR-V struck a Ford Explorer Fire Department vehicle at about 10:30 p.m. Thursday. State Police said both cars were driving on the ramp to South I-57 from Halsted Street. The CFD vehicle had its emergency lights and sirens on, but the Honda would not yield and struck it from behind, State Police said. Chicago fire officials said the Battalion 21 SUV was getting on the expressway when it was hit. The battalion chief was taken to Little Company of Mary Hospital for evaluation and then released. The vehicle suffered minor damage, and the driver of the other car was cited, CFD said. President Donald Trump's administration unveiled plans for a significant overhaul of the Public Service Loan Forgiveness (PSLF) program, the Associated Press reported on Monday. The proposed changes arrive based on concerns that federal funds have been used to support organizations that the administration views as acting outside the law. Newsweek has reached out to the Department of Education, ED, for comment via email on Monday. Why it matters. PSLF, which was established in 2007, allows government employees, including teachers, firefighters, and many who work for nonprofits, to have their student loans canceled after they've made payments for 10 years. The proposed changes from the White House, if implemented, have advocates warning of potential unintended consequences and increased uncertainty for borrowers whose loan forgiveness depends on their employer's continued eligibility. The ED's proposal follows an executive order signed by Trump in March and is currently moving through a regulatory process expected to conclude in July 2026. What to know? The Trump administration's planned PSLF revisions would allow the ED to remove loan forgiveness eligibility from organizations it determines have engaged in illegal activities. Definitions within the draft rules, including those related to immigration, terrorism, and transgender issues, have prompted concerns from advocates and education professionals about the potential for subjective or politically motivated routine call. A car fire on the expressway, nothing too out of the ordinary for the brave men and women of the Chicago Fire Department. But before sunrise painted the skyline, the darkness of July 8th was pierced by sirens, smoke, and the unmistakable scent of burning rubber. And this time, the emergency responders would become the ones in need of help. Just before 5:00 a.m., Engine 62 was racing down the southbound lanes of I-57 near Halsted Street, red lights flashing through the pre-dawn haze. The dispatch had described a disabled vehicle ablaze on the shoulder, with flames threatening to spread. Veteran firefighter Darnell Hayes, 39, was seated behind the driver, tightening his gloves as they approached the scene. Hayes had been with the department for over a decade. He was the guy who cracked jokes in the station kitchen, who always remembered your birthday, and who never flinched on the front line. He'd seen fires engulf buildings and had pulled survivors from twisted wreckage. But what none of his experience could prepare him for was the sudden impact of a reckless driver speeding through the emergency lane. As Engine 62 slowed to pull near the burning sedan, a black SUV barreled through a line of flares, ignoring officers who were trying to redirect traffic. The SUV clipped the back of the fire truck and spun out, crashing into Hayes and another firefighter who had just exited the engine to begin laying hose. Witnesses say it all happened in a flash, a sickening crunch, a burst of sparks, and a flurry of radio traffic calling for backup and medics. Hayes was thrown several feet by the force of the impact, landing hard on the concrete median. His fellow firefighter, Maria Velasquez, narrowly avoided the brunt of the hit, suffering only minor scrapes. But Hayes was not so lucky. His helmet cracked. His leg was bent at an unnatural angle. And for the first time in his long career, he was the one being carried away on a stretcher. Traffic came to a complete standstill on I-57 as fellow firefighters, now filled with shock and rage, scrambled to extinguish the car fire while simultaneously tending to their fallen brother. Velasquez, her hands still shaking, grabbed the radio and called it in. "Firefighter down, we need EMS priority 1. We have a man down." The driver of the SUV, later identified as a 27-year-old man from Calumet City, was taken into custody at the scene. Preliminary tests showed signs of intoxication. Charges are pending, and investigators believe excessive speed and reckless driving are to blame. At the hospital, Hayes underwent emergency surgery for multiple fractures and internal injuries. As of Tuesday morning, he remained in stable but serious condition at Stroger Hospital. His wife, Letitia, sat by his side, clutching his hand through the tubes and monitors. The couple has 2 children, ages 7 and 12, who have spent the last day trying to understand why their father, their hero, won't be coming home right away. Back at Engine 62's firehouse in the Roseland neighborhood, the mood was somber. Hayes' locker, usually bursting with gear and personal notes, stood eerily quiet. His fellow crew members, many of whom had shared meals and missions with him, spoke only in hushed tones. "He's the kind of guy who always puts others first," said Lieutenant Aaron Shaw. "The kind who runs into a burning building without thinking twice. Seeing him laid out like that, it hits different." The incident sparked immediate outrage and concern across the city. Mayor Brandon Johnson issued a statement late Monday morning, saying, "Our firefighters risk their lives every day to keep us safe." This accident is a painful reminder of how quickly things can turn tragic. We're praying for Darnell Hayes' full recovery and calling for greater accountability on our roadways. The Chicago Fire Department, shaken but determined, used the moment to once again push for stricter enforcement of the state's "move over" law, which requires motorists to change lanes or slow down when approaching emergency vehicles. Despite the law being on the books for years, compliance has been spotty. And tragically, first responders continue to pay the price. "We can't keep losing good people to preventable crashes," Fire Commissioner Annette Nance-Holtz said during an afternoon press conference. "It's not just about protecting our team. It's about the respect and safety that all emergency personnel deserve." As dusk fell over the city, a vigil was quietly held outside the hospital. Dozens of firefighters, paramedics, and police officers lined the sidewalk, candles in hand, helmets tucked respectfully under arms. They weren't just praying for Hayes. They were standing for every responder who has ever put their life on the line, only to become the victim. Inside, Letitia Hayes looked at her husband, bruised and battered but still breathing, and whispered, "You're coming back. This city still needs you."